So, since the response to my last making of video was exceedingly positive, I was encouraged to try and turn this into a more regular thing. So without further ado, Innuendo started way back in late April, but was repeatedly put on hold due to the rise of a certain virus and, well, me deciding to spontaneously shoot another 10-minute film on vacation, which would cost me 2 months of editing. During the autumn break, I was going to return to this film. However, by that time my actor had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, and when he got out, I was back in school. But it gets worse. See, for the entire duration of the film, it had to rain, except for the final shot. This meant I had to message Felix whenever it started to rain, rush to the locations, and collect as many shots as we could while it lasted. This soon proved impractical, as I never knew what to shoot first. So, I had to go back to my shot list and divide it into 3 stages of rain. Yeah, you heard me right. The first stage involved shots that took place inside where you can spot rain behind the windows. The second stage meant shots that took place outside where, although it wouldn't be thrown at your face, you can't help but notice some rain in the environment. And finally, the third stage included shots that depicted rain so heavy that my camera could potentially break from it. Eventually, I got past my overly ambitious plans and picked out a few shots that wouldn't necessarily require rain, where the sound design and color grading could do the job. While all this resolved a few problems, such as not having to decide what to shoot first, it was still far away from easy. Many times, Felix couldn't make it and we'd have to wait another week or 2 until we'd get our next chance. Relying on weather conditions is not a wise game to play in the field of no-budget filmmaking. I can't recommend it. Some scenes I had to rethink altogether since they just weren't possible with the equipment at my disposal. For this montage, my initial idea was to have the character stroll along the street during a storm in slow motion, and we did do that.
Okay.
As well as a number of other shots that would follow, but I chose to not use them since they were too shaky and, honestly, just not as good as they were in my head. Sorry, Felix. Another shot that didn't make it in was one that would follow this one. Here I would have match cut to the character's hands being wetted by raindrops instead of the stream of water, for which we used a watering can. We shot it 3 times until I finally gave up. I was going to do the same in this scene, cutting from this to this. But it just didn't work. We still made use of the watering can. Felix had to be wet in this shot, as he was in the last. It was barely visible in the shot. Sorry, Felix. Another shot for which I had to fake rain was this one. Since, in the story, the window was open all night, the carpet had to be wet. So... it was not visible in the shot. It's okay, I'm an artist. Like with the lodge, many shots once again went through various different versions. This shot was especially hard to figure out. These were my first 2 attempts. Can you spot the issue? If not, it's very tied to my own preferences. The character's life is supposed to be plain and monotone. Hence, no big computer setup, no consoles, and no movie posters. I finally landed on a high angle and, sure enough, it solved every problem. Not only are the viewer's eyes no longer distracted by the background, but it also perfectly corresponds with the preceding low angle in terms of perspective. Basically, if he looks up, so does the camera. As Martin Scorsese said, cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out. I think I took that idea a bit too far. Recently, I find that I'm obsessed with keeping my frames as simple and confined as possible, in order to prevent people from looking into the wrong corner of the shot, and to not overwhelm them with unnecessary information. With that, I'm finally seeing some sort of signature style in my work, though I don't know if I should keep pushing it or try something else instead. Anyways, back to the film. In case you were wondering how I got this very blue and moody lighting, well, I didn't. That's just Color grading. It never fails to blow my mind just how much you can achieve with that. None of my shots looked anywhere near this good before. The trick is to design every shot individually. I've seen people simply copy and paste one color palette onto every shot, but it is only when you do each one separately that you can work out all of its potential. Besides color grading, another thing that I completely forgot to mention in my last making of video was the sound design. Every single sound you just heard is fake, meaning all of it was recorded in post, and so was the entirety of this film. And, well, all of these. The only exception being the scenes that feature dialogue. I'd like to think I've gotten a lot better at it with every project. In Kill or Be Killed, most of it were footsteps and ambience. Pink clouds is when things got a little crazy. That's where I began mimicking my own mouth sounds. And in the lodge, it was just nuts. If you already saw the films, you'll know that the soundtracks overshadowed most of that. As for the inspiration behind the film, more than anything, I was looking at Tarkovsky, going as far as to steal some of his compositions, many of which never made it into the final cut. A friend of mine thought this shot was inspired by The Shawshank Redemption, when really, it was Terrence Malick. I was especially inspired by Stalker, the most obvious similarities being the 4:3 ratio, nature as a theme, and the somewhat unconventional plot. Speaking of which, some people were apparently confused by, which surprised me since I always thought I had written a fairly simple and comprehensible story. The general misconception seems to be that the character feared the outside, when the actual premise was that he longed for it, and that he was merely hesitant to accept that, the reason for which can be interpreted in a number of different ways.
It's a metaphor.
I know it's a metaphor.
Innuendo took us a total of 7 months to finish. Felix and I put an absurd amount of work into it. It's still surreal to think it's finally out. Anyways, look forward to more short films and making-ofs in the future. Goodbye!